Good morning. Southwest Florida Prima is pleased to introduce Adam James. Adam James joins us today from Naples, Florida. He is the founder and CEO of Mindful Journey, a web-based platform used by organizations nationwide to help employees take care of their mental health well-being. For over a decade, he has captivated audiences with his personal story of overcoming the odds and has shared his teachings on stages ranging from TEDx to Fortune 500 companies. In addition to his professional experiences, he is an NCAA Division I men's basketball official and would be grateful for a warm welcome instead of the usual boos he's become accustomed to as a referee. Please help me welcome Mr. Adam James.
Good morning, Prima! Thank you so much, Michelle. We can't do this in booze already. I'm kidding. Thank you so much. She is right. Booze are something I'm super accustomed to. So if I walk out of here without booze today, I don't even need a standing ovation. I'm going to feel pretty happy with myself. Before beginning, I'd like to just briefly thank Michelle, Michael, the rest of the committee for welcoming me here. Deeply grateful, thankful for the opportunity. Looking forward to our time spent together this morning. I've got some great news and some really great news for you all today. The really great news is it's Monday morning, just before 9 a.m., and we are not in the office. Woo! Yes! So your phones may be buzzing, crisis may be arising, but at least for this next hour, and hopefully for these next few days, you have some calm and peace and mindfulness and clarity. The other great news I have for you is that I promise in these next 59 minutes that we have together to give you every ounce of energy that I have. Everything that I've prepared to deliver today, everything that I've learned about your industry, I promise to give you every ounce of energy that I have this morning. And I promise to and commit to you that I'm not going to try to be something I'm not. I am not in risk management. I don't know what it is that you do. I empathize deeply with what you do. Because as I was preparing for today, I learned a lot from the committee members, and Michael in particular just a few weeks ago had shared with me that he recalled a time early in his career when he was at a prior city where he received a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning about an officer-involved shooting in his respective city. I know that those calls may come at all hours. Those emails with crisis, with blame of why you didn't do this, why we didn't roll out this safety measure more effectively, why we didn't plan for this, is often prevalent. So my objective today isn't to try to teach you the tactical and technical on how it is that you can more effectively deploy different mechanisms to create safety internally, or how it is that you can file claims, or how it is that you can engage with vendors. My role today, as I see it, is to try to help you get just a little bit better, to make small shifts in your daily habits to enhance your individual effectiveness. I want to help you become better mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, grandmothers, grandfathers, to help you become a better leader, a better team member, better friend, a better human. Because if we as individuals can get better, as people, if we can be better, we're inherently going to be better as directors of risk management, as directors of human resources, as risk manager in whatever capacity you lead. I talked to some folks last night. I know there are directors of finance, et cetera. Whatever it is that your title encompasses, if we can get better as people, we're going to get better in what it is that we do. So to get there, we're going to focus on two primary, overarching, broad-ranging themes that 55 minutes will never allow us to cover all of. Those two areas are passion and mindfulness. By a quick show of hands, when you're interacting with someone for whether the first or 100th time, can you tell if they're passionate about what it is that they do? If you think so, do you mind kindly raising your hand? see just about all the hands go up. And I agree with you. There's no right or wrong answer there. I don't have a spreadsheet of data to tell you that, yeah, if you deploy more passion, you're going to be able to be 27% more effective in your job. I don't have anything tangible like that, but I absolutely agree with each and every one of you that passion is able to be identified. Yet, what's interesting is because we can't quantify it and because we can't make it tangible, and you can't go to your boss and say, you should give me a raise because I'm more passionate than the next person, or you should give me a raise because I'm more passionate than the next person. We tend to neglect that passion. It's not a unique differentiator in the marketplace, and over time, our passion dwindles. After years and years of defeat and heartache and disappointment and failed attempts and lost opportunities, we may wake up one morning, look in the mirror, and not even recognize the version of ourselves that we're looking at. Our passion that we once had, the fire inside of our belly, is diminished and non-existent. Today, I want to help you regain that passion because although it's not quantifiable, it's definitely identifiable. We just all have uncovered that. And no, you can't quantify it. No, you can't use it as a unique differentiator, but you can undoubtedly create connection and ripples of passion internally based upon how it is that you show up. And a passionate director of risk management, a passionate team member is somebody who's willing to be kind in spite of their difficulties, one who's willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes, one who recognizes that this isn't about me, but that this is about somebody else. Our passion is essential. The question becomes, of course, well, how do we find it? If it's been lost, or how do we sustain it if it hasn't been lost? As you might be able to tell, I tend to speak with a little bit of passion. Usually by this point in the presentation, I'm up on some tables and doing all sorts of things. Don't worry, I'm with risk management professionals. I won't be doing that today. But because of how it is that I've shown up, I've been asked that question probably hundreds of times. But one in particular that stands out to me was years back in the early part of my speaking career, a friend of mine that I went to high school with, I grew up in Pittsburgh area, moved to Florida for college, and had lost touch with a lot of people like we all do after high school, especially when moving out of state. So this gentleman I hadn't heard from since we were 18, he watched one of my presentations online, and he said, Adam, I love what you're doing. Really found great value in your presentation, but I've got to ask, how do you speak with so much passion? I don't think that I can get that passionate about anything in my life. And yeah, I was grateful for his kind words, but it hit me. I thought, here's somebody who's 25 years old, just had a kid, new in his career, from my vantage point, what you see on social media, rising quickly. And here I am, as I perceive it, in the trenches, grinding at this business, not making traction. He's looking to me and saying, how do you have passion? I'm literally just 2 years removed from sleeping in my car, and here he is, building a family, growing something. I didn't even have the money to begin thinking about a family. And it dawned on me, if at 25, somebody who is seemingly doing well in their career with a new family is already feeling passionless, what do we feel at 35? At 45? What do we feel at 55 and 65 and 75 after life has told us we can't, after we've gone through divorce and infidelity, after we've gone through bankruptcy and had heartache, after we've gone through difficulty, after we've faced imposter syndrome, after we've felt like we're not enough, after we've had a loss of a loved one, after we've had an illness or a diagnosis? What do we feel after all of that has happened in our life? We feel passionless. But ladies and gentlemen, what has happened to you does not define you. What you've gone through is not where your future can be. It doesn't matter how many disappointments you've had. It doesn't matter how many defeats you've had. The mask that you've been showing up with every day that is hiding behind all of that, I've got some great news for you today. You can rebuild your life. You can become who it is that you once dreamt to be. No, we might not be able to be a professional athlete anymore. We might not be able to stand on stage and sing our song. We might not be able to do something where time has elapsed and we don't have that opportunity anymore, but we can dream again. Does anyone recall when they were a kid? You don't need to answer, but just challenge you to think. When we were young, we had this curiosity, this desire to dream. I envisioned shooting the game-winning shot, Game 7 in the NBA Finals, thousands of times. Some of you might have dreamt about winning an award, becoming the CEO of a company, starting a company, becoming an artist. And maybe those things didn't come to fruition. Maybe your life hasn't turned out just as you envisioned, but it doesn't mean that we still can't show up with passion. It doesn't mean we can't rekindle the fire that we once held deep in our belly when we were children. When Casey, my friend, had asked me that question, I replied back to him very simply. How I'm able to speak with, live with, and work with so much passion is because I have an overwhelming why. Why I do this, why I'm here today, why I'm so passionate, what brings it out is that this isn't about me. If it was, I would have quit in 2013 when I was sleeping in the front seat of my car 3 months after starting my business and everyone having told me to stop. What are you doing? You can't even get any traction at this business. If it was just about me in those moments, I would have given up. So many times what we do is for our ego to collect a paycheck, for respectability out in the marketplace, for praise, for accolades, for recognition. If that's the sole reason for why we do what we do, when adversity hits, we won't sustain. Why I do what I do is so much bigger than me. It's about you. I tell this to audiences all the time, and I think some people are like, well, this guy's full of you know what. He doesn't even know me. No, I don't know you. I don't. I've met a few of you. I do know a few in advance of this. But I know that the National Alliance on Mental Illness says that 1 in 5 of us are dealing with something clinically diagnosable. And I know 100% of us in this room face difficulty, have relationship challenges, financial challenges, face imposter syndrome. I know this to be true. And as a result of that, I had made it my personal mission to take the hopelessness, the helplessness that I felt so often in my life to try to bring hope back to the world, to people, because maybe 150 of you hate my message today, but I assure you there's going to be one who's sitting here who needs to hear, not because I'm special, but because we all need reminders of what's deep inside of us. So I challenge you, ladies and gentlemen, to think about, why do you do what you do? Why are you here at this conference? Why did you get into risk management, into human resources, into your respective role or your respective county or your respective city? Why do you hang out with the people that you hang out with? Why do you read the books that you read or choose not to read? If you get nothing else from our time together today, my hope is that at the conclusion of this conference, you spend some time introspectively really thinking about why I do what I do. And look, make no mistake, I, just like everybody else, want to make money, want to rise more, all of those things. I'm not sending a message to not pursue those things. What I'm saying is that the only good answer you have for why you do what you do is that you're doing everyone a disservice. Your work matters. Your work touches thousands of lives, not just the team members internally based upon the programs that you deploy to help people be more safe and to manage and minimize risk, but in the respective county. If you just help your team with a driving solution, how they might take their trucks out on the road, that could save a life based upon how it is that they choose to mindfully engage or disengage from a behavior. We may never know how it is that our work impacts others, but I often say to people, because I'm forced to quantify what I do in my business, a mindful journey, and speaking all the time, and I often say to people that just because you can't measure the impact of a kind word, does that mean that we shouldn't deliver it? Just because you might not be able to measure the direct impact of what it is that you all do, does that mean that you shouldn't engage in it? Why we do what we do has got to be bigger than us. The next question my friend asked me after I didn't give him that long-winded a response, don't worry. But he did, I sensed some, again, like that's a cliche, and I haven't faced the type of adversity, Adam, that you have, and so that's great. I'm hearing that, but how do you find it? How do you find your why? And I think it's the biggest cop-out in the world when people say, well, I don't have one. And in my opinion, we don't ever slow down for long enough to look for it. How you find your why is by taking time to think about what you're thinking about. We're living in a time of increasing distractions where we're always doing something. We don't know how to be with self, and the moment we actually engage our brain to think about something difficult, whether work or personal, as soon as it gets difficult, we tend to give up because we don't like that physiological discomfort that we feel. There's a book I read years back by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. Has anyone heard of or read it? One, a couple folks, great. Highly recommend the read if you feel led to do so. What I love about the writing is that he breaks our brain down into two systems. Very simple. System 1 and System 2. My friend knows. System 1 is the part of our brain that when it's activated, it tends to operate like it's on autopilot. There's no discomfort. It's like if I were to ask you what 2 plus 2 is, you'd be able to instantaneously say 4. You could be in midst of a deep conversation or deep work. Somebody could interrupt you and you would know the response without flinching an eye. That's where a majority of us live. Because the second part of our brain, when it's activated, it causes physiological discomfort. Our palms get a little sweaty, our pupils dilate, our heart rate increases. We feel uncomfortable. So the moment we're immersed in that for an extended period of time, we go back to where it is we're comfortable. The moment we dig in to search for our why and to ask these tough questions and to really dig in, as soon as our mind literally gets hurting, we go back to our device or Netflix or some streaming service or something where we can feel safe and comfortable. Look, I do all of those things too. I'm not trying to project a message today that you're just 24/7 on and just this mindful guru where you're always looking to be better. We have to have escapes. We have to do things that make us feel disconnected and happy, and all of those things are not a bad thing. But what I'm saying to you is that if your excuse is you don't know your passion, you don't know your why, and thus you can't have passion, in my opinion, it's a cop-out. We have to be intentional on looking for it. By show of hands, how many of you are familiar, I think probably all of us now, even if we're maybe not practitioners of meditating and such, how many of you are familiar with mindfulness? Wonderful. I think there's a huge misperception on what mindfulness is. I think people think that I run a company called Mindful Journey, that I'm a Zen master, that I've just got this whole life thing figured out, that all I do is for 8 hours a day sit in a yoga pose and just hum soft melodies to myself. I don't. Mindfulness, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't require you to meditate. It doesn't require you to sit in a dim lit room with soft melodies. It doesn't require you to do yoga. You can do all those things to get yourself to a mindful state. But mindfulness, at its core, very simply, is just bringing your attention to the now on purpose. being where your feet are. Thinking about what it is that we're thinking about. But in this increasingly distracted world where devices are so prevalent, we don't know how to just be bored anymore. Dr. Anna Lemke, who is a leading psychiatrist at Stanford University and the author of a book, Dopamine Nation, she's somebody I interviewed in our platform, Mindful Journey, which is one of our key features of the program. And she mentioned in her book, then in conversation, that the reason we're all so miserable today is because we're avoiding being miserable. And I know that might sound like doom and gloom, that also is hard to measure. And her reasoning behind that isn't to say broadly that every human living in the world is miserable. But the reality is from her research, from her patients, etc., a lot of times people are reverting to things that can escape the reality of now. Anyone ever fly out and go to sit into the gate area, and as soon as you get there, go right to your phone? Anybody want to be brave and share that with us? Yeah, we don't know how to just be here because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable being the thoughts in our headspace, especially if we're feeling inadequate, especially if we're feeling disappointed from 15 years ago, especially if we're mad that our wife or husband left us, especially if we're mad that we didn't get the promotion, especially if we're mad that somebody pissed you off on the road, especially if something had happened. We go to something to escape the now. My challenge to you is to be mindful in every capacity, but particularly for purposes of today, of the stories that you attach to about self and others. As I mentioned, I love watching a good documentary, TV show, etc. And when I see something that moves me, I'm a crier. I got to admit. Anyone else watch a Netflix movie or some movie before and cry after watching? Thank you for the brave gentleman in the back. You know, it's always like us guys have such a harder time admitting this vulnerable stuff. When my wife and I first got together, she saw me cry at the end of the movie, and she's like thinking, I'm distraught. Like, something happened to me. And, you know, she obviously, I think, hopefully loves me. She just married me, so that's good. But she had never seen that. Her dad had never cried visibly in front of her. And so for men, I say that jokingly, Michael and the other folks who raised their hands, but we do have a tougher time admitting that. And ladies, don't worry, you're not off the hook. I know there are some who might feel like crying could be a sign of weakness, but I'm sharing all this. I'm getting off center here to say that movies can move us. But when you think about what it is that moves us in it, it's often not the lighting, the director, the actors and actress. Yeah, they contribute to it, but it's the story that moves us. For me, those underdog stories when somebody has risked it all and maybe I see myself in them, I don't know what it is, and then they thrive in the end, it just makes me emotional because I see myself in it. And the story is what connects with me, and it dawned on me that stories have deep power. So what is the story that we're telling ourselves? What story, you don't need to answer, but I just challenge you to think, what story are you telling yourself about yourself? You know, we might fail at one thing in life, and we attach to that failure. Our whole identity is attached to it. I see it all the time when I was failing in business on the front end. So many people were saying, just go get a real job, go get a job, go do this. And I took on many odd jobs to help me sustain, of course, but it was never my intention to stay in it because I knew what I was here to do, what my purpose was. When we fail at something, it doesn't have to be our identity. We look for supporting evidence out in the world. If somebody leaves us, if somebody hurts us, if somebody wrongs us, if we get fired or we don't get promoted, we'll look for supporting evidence and say, see, I told you I'm not smart enough. Oh, there it is. I'm not good enough. They told me again. I'm not talented enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good looking enough. You fill in the blank. We hold on to these things as though they're these defining labels that we cannot break free of, that there are these chains that bound us to here. What story are you telling yourself about yourself? The stories we speak over our life matter because there is power to it and we will attach to it. And then it also impacts the stories we then tell ourselves about others. How we feel about self, how we feel internally is a direct result of the conflict or lack thereof that occurs with others. If we're in a good headspace, if we're clear, we're happy, somebody cuts us off on the road, it's less likely to impact us. If we're frustrated, if we're mad, if something bad has happened to us in our mind, we're likely to react because we're not satisfied with self. So we have to be mindful of what stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Then we have to be mindful of the stories that we attach to about our colleagues, about our peers, I know Michael's been super intentional on service partners. I love that because there's just a negative connotation you could take, and we'll talk about words momentarily, but vendors versus service partners can make you think two different things. We attach to two different stories as a result of the words that we use. I want you to think, and perhaps I think we've got a bunch here that won't point fingers or anything, so I'm comfortable with asking, but how many of you have interacted with a colleague and again, please, no pointing fingers or naming names, because I know some of you might be colleagues here, but you've interacted with someone in your working space, or you in the past or present, and they would come in day after day just with this buzz-off look. Has anyone ever had that person that they just always look mad or frustrated or angry? Anyone? Some rumblings. Michael, that's not you, is it? I know, I'm the most positive guy, actually. Yeah, I think we've all encountered that. You know what happens? This person who comes in rude and maybe egocentric from our vantage point and maybe a little bit abrasive, we begin to attach to this story that they are unkind, that they're a bad person, that they are a jerk, that they're arrogant, that they're all these things. We have this person here, and we define them based upon a story that we've attached to because of one event that has occurred maybe now or in the past, and we hold on so tightly to it just like we do our own individual stories, and then we further perpetuate that story so there's a distance between us and them forever. But maybe, just maybe, ladies and gentlemen, this person who is going through this very thing is going through something that you and I know nothing about. Maybe, just maybe, they're feeling insecure when they come into work. They don't feel like they're enough or they're adequate. So they come in to show how strong they are. They're wearing this mask that says, I'm tough and I'm this and I'm that, but really, they're hurting. And then we have another colleague, on the other hand. And this one comes into the office space excited, vibrant, joyful, always optimistic. Monday morning at 9 a.m., they're fired up, just like you all were today. Anyone ever experienced or interacted with one of those team members? Mike, well, I know this is actually you. Happy. Yeah, so a few hands. Yeah, so we see this person, we're like, boy, it's so nice to be around them. They've got the perfect life. I see their life on social media. They've got the great house, the great car, everything. Their life is so joyful. I wish I had their life. They've got it all together. And I just love being around them. They're so peppy and cheerful and kind. They're just a great person. And we attach to this story that perpetuates itself based upon a few occurrences and maybe a series and years of occurrences, but we hold on so tightly now to this, and we never authentically engage with this individual because we assume everything is perfect, but maybe, just maybe, they're going through the same thing that this person's going through. Maybe they're going through illness, hardship. Kids have left. They're out to college. They're going through some financial times. They're lost a parent. They're putting parents in their home. Something, and they continue to show up happy, and you assume everything's together, but you've got two people who are expressing outwardly different things, but are actually internally experiencing something very similar and comparable, but we create a story of each that is not rooted in fact, but in fiction. And in each occurrence, the one who's really nice and the one who's not so nice we never really engage them as deeply as we could. We never ask, how are you, and genuinely mean it, because we assume with each of them we know the answer. This one's pissed off and this one's always happy. We have to be mindful of the stories that we tell ourselves, about ourselves, and about others, so that we can more meaningfully connect with self and connect to others. I've been a nerd for human behavior for so long, and there's so many layers to my life that we can peel back, and we can talk outside, and I can share context as to probably what it is that makes me tick, because I'm in constant pursuit of understanding that for myself. But as a result of that desire to learn about others and really get in tune with why we do what we do, about 4.5 years ago, I started a company centered around mental health well-being. There's a dire need in the marketplace, for my opinion, for something that was less reactive and more preventive, which formed Mindful Journey. One of the key features, as I saw fit, that needed to be part of it was raw and real conversations where we didn't have a script and we didn't just talk about all the things that we're doing great. We talked about real stuff. And so I've been so fortunate to have people all over the world join, from recognizable figures out there in the marketplace, or celebrities and athletes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not personally impressed with resumes, but it's been rewarding to see these people that society may say they've got it all together. They hear from them that they face stuff like we all do. David Pottruck, who was the former CEO of Charles Schwab, said his biggest regret in life was becoming the CEO at Charles Schwab. Clint Hurdle, who, for those of you who are baseball fans in here, you might recognize that name. He just came back with the Rockies. He led the Pittsburgh Pirates, my beloved Pirates, that I'm admittedly a fair weather fan of because they're never any good, except when Clint was there. He took them back to the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, took the Colorado Rockies to the World Series in 2007, and in 1978, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the top baseball prospect in America. He was supposed to be the next thing at 20 years old. And to his own admittance, he never quite lived up to that hype or those expectations. He did have a good career in the major leagues, but folks would look at Clint in those moments in time and think that he had everything together. What people were not seeing was the suffering in silence, the over-engaging with alcohol to numb his pain and to try to support this pressure that was out there in the world to live up to these expectations. So for years and years, he relied on alcohol until it came to a head after 2 DUIs. He wrecked his vehicle. Fortunately, he nor others were not injured, and he was able to get away by saying, I just fell asleep at the wheel. But those closest to him knew the truth. And his mother said to him, Clint, I don't care if you win another game. I don't care what it is that you do. I don't care if you do anything else of significance out there to everyone else. Just promise me you'll never have another drink again. And he's 26 years sober today. There are stories like that that I can point to from so many other people, and I just picked 2 to honor. We'll probably touch on some more, mostly to honor their stories, but to also provide us some lessons that I think are applicable to each and every one of us, because after all these guests that I've had the privilege to engage with, I wanted to understand what it is that makes them tick, how it is that they've been able to get through adversity. So I've asked each and every guest that I've had in an unscripted conversation. There are 3 questions that are actually asked of every guest. And one is, what's the most challenging thing you've gone through in your life? And what do you recall having done to get through it? And I've heard some of these raw and real answers, and all of them, as I think back, I can point to a few things that allowed them to get through. One, they were radically honest with their situation. They weren't willing to point fingers and say, I'm here because of my parents, or I didn't have the right upbringing, or I didn't have this, or because how I look, or I'm overweight, or I'm underweight, or I'm not pretty enough, or somebody didn't give me an opportunity. Excuse me. They were radically honest with self. They were willing to be vulnerable and become reliant on community. They opened up to friends and peers and colleagues. They were vulnerable and willing to ask for help, so community helped them get through. They were willing to use their pain for good, to share their message in some form by starting nonprofits, by speaking on stage, by helping and supporting others. I know Clint today still is heavily involved with AA by being a sponsor to multiple people. There are varying ways they use their pain for good. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, they were super mindful of the words that they used to describe their situation. You know, the stories that I talk to about you that we attach to, The way we create that story is through a use of words, which is why I brought up about Michael with the difference between service providers and vendors. The words that we use matter. I remember when I was a kid, teachers would say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a lie. Words hurt. The phrase, I hate you versus I love you could make somebody feel drastically different. There's just one changed word in that little phrase. When one is delivered in a certain tone, you might feel warm and fuzzy and you're the most important person in the world. And, excuse me, the other could make you feel as you're inadequate. If your spouse, God forbid, or your kid or somebody comes to you fiercely and says, I hate you, it's going to penetrate our soul. I don't care how tough and mean and bad you are, how shielded you are, it's going to hit, at least momentarily. The words that we speak to ourselves contribute to the stories that then we hold on to. Command Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans was one of the folks that I interviewed. She's maybe one of the most decorated war veterans in United States history. Is a Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient, won the Pat Tillman Award for Service in 2022, has led tens of thousands of troops on multiple deployments. In her last and final deployment to Afghanistan, a mortar blast had occurred. Fortunately, she survived with all limbs intact, but was in a coma and for 17 months had to recover in Walter Reed Hospital. And when coming out of the coma, although she could see that she was physically able, the doctor has a sign with a board saying, "You are deaf." Her whole life had been in service. Her whole life had been in the military. Her whole life had been in leadership. And now in one moment, not only was that wiped away from her, but now she could no longer hear. And she said, Adam, when I got out of there, everyone wanted to say to me that you're disabled, you're disabled, you're disabled. Everyone wanted to feel bad for me. She said, no, I refuse to hold that label. I am not disabled. I am mixed ability. I refuse to be disabled. I am mixed ability. You see, Adam, I could never read lips before. Now I can read lips with the best of them. She started a team called Team Unbroken, where military veterans do some adventurous and really cool things where they refuse to be bound by what it is that people might have tried to place on them. We have to be mindful of the words that we're telling ourselves about ourselves. By show of hands, any of you ever said anything unkindly about yourself? We can practice the vulnerability thing now. Everybody has. It's human nature. I do it. And the thing about mindfulness isn't that it doesn't happen. We can't control the thoughts that come to us. People say you can control them. You can't. You get to control what it is that you do with the thoughts that come to you. You can see them come and go as something you don't hang on to, or you can see them as something that anchors you to where it is that you are. Be mindful of the words that you're speaking and choose more empowering instead of disempowering words when they arise. We have to be mindful of how it is that we show up. How many of you have been doing your career, your job for 20 plus years? 30 plus? 40 plus? Amazing. 50 plus? Wow, I need to talk to you. Many lessons I can learn from you, my friend. That's amazing. Amazing. Kudos to all of you for sustaining a career that long. And thank you truly for the work you do, because it makes a difference even when you don't feel like it does. Years of experience, though, does not guarantee competency. You see, I've delivered hundreds of presentations. Hundreds. I could have come today and probably done okay by just showing up. But I spent hours and hours and hours of preparation on the front end to ensure that I never let my foot off the gas, because I'm mindful that the moment I think past experience guarantees future success is the moment I create an opportunity for fallibility and failure. There's an old adage in mindfulness that says, in the expert's mind, the possibilities are limited. But in the beginner's mind, the possibilities are limitless. You don't need to answer, ladies and gentlemen, but do you show up with an expert's mind or beginner's mind. You see, there are some huge innovations we could embrace. There are some things like artificial intelligence, which I know is coming in your world, and there are real threats of cyber, et cetera, that might make you a little bit uncomfortable. But as a result of some of this new technology that we might not have had 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when the new person comes in and wants to deploy all this innovative stuff, you might be resistant to it because you're so used to doing things the way we've always done. We see things after years of experience from a very narrow perspective. When I started in refereeing, I was 18 years old in college, and then I really started taking it serious at 20, and I was devoting literally hundreds of hours to breaking down film and going to camps because, contrary to popular belief, referees don't just show up and, just figure it out. There's lots of training and intentionality to get us to the spot that we are. And as I began rising through the ranks, I was passing men primarily, and I'm not discrediting the women. There wasn't a lot of women referees, but if there were who were in pursuit, and there now certainly are, but at the time that I was starting, there wasn't in the high school association. So I'm passing these men who, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Well, that's great. But just because you've been doing something for so long, if you've been acting as though we're back in 1981 when you first started and have never adopted the technology that's available to you to enhance your capability on the floor, then your effectiveness is going to be diminished. So years of experience does not correlate to competency. We have got to be willing to show up every day as though we've never done this before, and that is not easy. When I'm preparing for presentations, I'm looking at blank walls in my home. I have nobody to give me feedback of how it's going. It sucks. It's not fun. It hurts my mind. But the moment I say, I got it, is the moment that I come here and I my way through a presentation. It's the moment that I say, hey, do you see this slide? Here's this slide. Here's this slide. That's the moment when that occurs. In your work, just because you've been doing it for so many years, it doesn't guarantee that tomorrow is going to be risk-free. We have to be intentional on trying new things. Be courageous enough to fail. Implement things that we don't know how it is that they'll turn out. The biggest thing that I think separate effective leaders from those who might not be effective leaders, and we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, but one of the big things is decisive decision making. The leaders who are confident with self, they operate from a hope base and not a fear base. They're willing to try things and they're willing to take risks. They're not willing to just sit on the sidelines because the county commissioners or the city commissioners are going to judge and ridicule. I know as a referee I'm never going to get every play right, but if every time I blew my whistle when somebody was mad at me, if I just put my head down, I would have been eaten up, chewed up, eaten, you know what I'm saying, spit out. I would have never survived. Some would say I'm maybe not surviving. There's plenty of coaches out there who probably feel that. Be mindful of how it is that you show up. Be mindful of the type of leader that you are. I mentioned hope and fear, and I'm a firm believer that it's the reason why we do or don't do what it is that we do. Hope is not tangible, much like passion. It can be like a woo-woo, elusive concept. So if you talk to people inside a workplace and say, well, I'm hopeful for this or I'm hopeful for that, they may say, well, hope's not a strategy. We can't take that to the county commissioner meeting. We can't do that. Hope's not a strategy. No, hope is not a strategy, but hope can save lives. A hopeful word to somebody who's having a suicidal ideation could literally save their life. Hope is nothing more than seeing what it is that is in front of you. If there's adversity, if there's trials, if there's tribulations, if there's budget cuts, if there's frustrations, if you're in a lawsuit, if people are accusing you, if all of these things are happening seemingly to you, hope is nothing more than accepting what is. I'm not this woo-woo speaker who says, if you close your eyes, you see it, you believe it, you're going to achieve it. No, life can be tough. So we have to deploy hope, and it's nothing more than seeing what is here, not avoiding it, and choosing to believe that something brighter is on the other side. And when we're inwardly self-secure and know ourselves in a decisive decision maker, we operate from a hopeful state instead of a fear-based state. A fear-based state is where we're always saying, well, I don't know if such and such will like this. I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if we can try this technology, too big of a learning curve. I don't know if our people are going to like it. I don't know this. If I would have always listened to those things in both my mindful journey business and the speaking business, I would have never taken action. Because everyone said, well, who's going to listen to you when I was 23 years old and first started the business? And it's a fair question. Who's going to listen to you? You don't have any life experience. No, but I gained it in real time. And why do I need to have accolades to have at 23 been able to pour hope in the world? We allow what it is that we think we have to be to deter us from what it is that we can be. Are you telling a story internally to your colleagues of hope or one of fear? Are you operating from hope or are you operating from fear? Leadership to me, again, we could talk for hours about this. Don't worry, maybe a breakout session in the future, Michael. But leadership, very briefly, I want to spend just a few moments on. Again, decisive decision making is important, but I believe to be an effective leader, we also have to be patient. Anyone ever had somebody ask them for something and immediately begin rushing them to get them back that something? Has that ever happened to somebody? You're asked for something and they don't give you a timeline on it, and then they're pinging you and saying, where's that at? Where's that at? I need that. Has that ever happened to anyone? Yeah, and I get there are things that are urgent, and if we're expected to meet a deadline, let's execute on that. But in many occurrences, we ask people to do things with no expectations laid out on the front end, and when they don't do them the way that we think they should have done them, we get mad at them. We've got to be patient with people. Albert Einstein says that we're all geniuses. But if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will go around its whole life believing that it's stupid. Ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of you in here today have genius inside of you. No, you might not be good at this portion of your job. You might not be great at this portion of your job. You might not love the idea of being forward-facing and having to talk to the public or having to talk to your team. That might not be your sweet spot, but there is something that you've got genius inside of you for. But so many of us are trying to climb trees when we're meant to swim and thrive in water. And your team members are the same way. If I were inside your work environment, there are certain things that all of you would do 150 times better than me. But there are things that I would do inside of your work environment that I would do better than you. A team is really about finding everybody's strengths and allowing them to deploy them in confidence in the weaknesses that they have, work to build them up so hopefully they can get to a place of adequacy or competency so they can deliver in that. But if they don't, it doesn't make them less than. Be patient with your team members. They have some stuff inside of them that they can insert. It's your job as a leader, and I know most of you are in defined leadership roles, which, by the way, a title alone doesn't make us a leader. Leadership is really about how people feel, wanting to leave a lasting impression and actually doing so on those you lead and what you lead. But if you are in that defined leadership role, which I believe all of you are, it's our responsibility to allow people the opportunity to insert their full best selves into the workplace. We have to manage major moments. Look, I know some things might appear as a crisis to others in your work environment or to the community that really, quite frankly, might not be a crisis. But I recognize, too, that just like that phone call that Michael got at 2 a.m. when there was an officer-involved shooting in his city, that would be a major moment. And as leaders, it is our responsibility to show no dents in the armor outwardly. That doesn't mean we can't be vulnerable later, but our teams are looking to us for guidance. Many years ago when I was at a program, it was called a crew chief program. It was for people who were aspiring to be leaders in basketball refereeing at the collegiate level. For those who might not be sports fans or basketball fans, there are 3 referees on every game, pro and collegiate, most high school as well. And there's a designated crew chief. He or she is essentially the leader. We all have a responsibility to lead, just like in your work environment. But at this particular program, the gentleman who was running the NCAA tournament, March Madness, for those of you who are sports fans, he was sharing what it is that he looks for in the referees that he selects. There are 100 referees who get selected for March Madness. There's about 650 of us throughout the country at the Division I level who are qualified to get into that 100. So to become part of the 650, you already have to have, this isn't to pat me on the back, become part of an elite group of sorts. But to become part of the 100, it's a whole nother level. And John was his name. John has since passed, unfortunately. But John was asked by one of the attendees, what are you looking for when you're selecting those 100? What are the criteria that you are seeking when you're selecting the 100 to be in March Madness? And he said, look, you need to have rules knowledge, you need to look the part, you need to run well, you need to be able to resolve conflict, you need to be able to communicate effectively, but more than anything else, John said, you need to be able to manage major moments. He needed somebody who could look with millions of people watching at home, tens of thousands watching in the arena with these big coaches who are making millions of dollars to lead their teams and are in the public spotlight. He needed somebody who could look them dead in their eyes, unwavering with conviction, confidence, and certainty, and let them know that this is how it's going to be with humility and strength. That is what he was seeking. And I think it's a valuable lesson for all of us, ladies and gentlemen, because you all face some tough stuff. Some crisis that may occur, may generate local or, in some occurrences, national media attention. Maybe it's a slip and fall inside of one of your buildings that doesn't get a lot of attention, but of course for somebody, that is a crisis. Especially if there's severe injury or death, of course, or if there's an accident, even if it's a subtle one inside of a parking lot where one of your team members backs into somebody. Now that person who's having a bad day could get confrontational with your team member, and now there could be a physical altercation. You're dealing with these things in real time. I empathize and understand that. But how you manage those moments is what sets the tone for how it is that your culture sustains internally. If you're reactive and you're flustered and you're not able to bring a sense of calm, you're doing those in your organization a disservice. So one of the things that I do when I'm on the basketball floor, and I feel my job, much like you all, can be very chaotic. Everyone always hates me. Trust me. That's why I was saying when Michelle introduced me, and I hope it didn't come across the wrong way with the handshake, but no one loves us, so we're used to getting the no handshakes. We're used to getting the boos. They'll pretend that they like you, but often have an agenda. So I have a little bit of understanding from a standpoint of the major moments you're facing. So one of the things that I do when I'm feeling chaos internally is this is my calming mechanism. Hands crossed, down at the waist, here, now. That's it. I don't know what's happening. I can't tell you the science behind it. But when I do this, now every time I do this doesn't mean something's going on. So if you see me refereeing a game and I'm doing this, oh, he's in crisis. It's not always the case. But in moments of unease, this centers me. This allows me to stay calm so I'm not gyrating, because it can be misconstrued if I'm doing this and doing that and doing this and pointing, that somebody might think that I'm mad or upset. So this is my center. I challenge you to think about something you can do. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's doing this. Find something that can bring you calm in the uncertainty, in the chaos. We deeply and desperately need calm when chaos arises, because when chaos occurs, it often breeds more chaos. We as leaders have got to be able to be vulnerable. And I've already spoken to this to some extent, but have you ever worked for a leader who every time they do something, they're always right? Yes, it's not good. It creates a disconnect, an organizational culture disconnect. It's our responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, to be courageous enough to admit mistakes. When I do something well in a game and I'm the design crew chief or designated crew chief, I'm always saying, we did this. We effectively adjudicated this technical foul or ejected this player. We did this. Not Adam. Not Adam. And when I screw up, I screwed up. I text our supervisor officials and say, I messed up this play, I misapplied this role, I clicked this timing issue, I screwed up. When we do something good, we do something good. When we do something bad, because it is still we, I do it. I did it. That is radical honesty. That is radical truth. That is radical ownership. I'm not hiding from it. That's vulnerability. Vulnerability doesn't mean that you're going to go into a corner and you're going to say, woe is me. It can mean that. It's okay to cry sometimes. I told you that. It's okay. Vulnerability is good. But vulnerability in this context of leadership is really looking inwardly and saying, I screwed that up. It's my fault. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got about just a few minutes left with you, and I want to end and close. I know we've absorbed so much content. You've been an amazing, attentive audience. I'm so deeply grateful for you. I hope that throughout this conference, some of you might be like, yeah, crazy motivational speaker guy. He was so passionate, crazy, intense at 9 a.m. But if that's your feeling, that's okay. But I just want to close with some words of hope and inspiration and encouragement and things that you can take away actionable for you so that you're engaged throughout the remainder of this conference and this week and can hold on to something. So my challenge and hope for you is to do one thing in a certain few areas, because there is a power in just doing one. So many times we stack all the things that we have to do, and thus we never act. If we're needing to get to the gym, we think about the traffic on the way to the gym, the person at the front desk who was mean to us last time, the man or woman who might judge us because it's been years since we've been in there, so we don't know how to work the equipment. So we think about all these things and they stack in our mind. To win a day, you just have to win a moment. To win an activity, you just have to win a step. To win at anything, it starts now. So my hope for you is that at the conclusion of this conference and throughout the entirety of your life, quite frankly, you do one thing every day that is rooted in kindness. Hold a door for somebody. Smile at your competitor out there. For those of you who are service providers. Smile and ask the colleague who might have said something rude about you in the past how they're doing and genuinely mean it. We never know when our time is up in life. I don't mean to get all, maybe too deep on you there, but how sad it would be for our last potential encounters to be ones of negativity where people remember us that way forever. We never really know. If you can do something kind for someone today, you might change their life in a way that you don't know. Kindness is not weakness. I hate it, and I'm going to pick on us guys again because I hate it. And you can see I'm probably more type A, right? I know I can be intense, but you're not going to see from me something, this is me. I have nothing to prove to you. If you're unkind to me, you're out. We're moving on. I'm not going to be confrontational with you. When coaches are yelling at me, sometimes I have to come back with strength, and we got tools like technical fouls to help. But it's more often than not, I'm just listening, they're yelling at me, and I look at them, I say, why are you yelling at me? We can just have a conversation. And almost instantaneously, it brings them down. Kindness spreads more kindness. Be kind. Do something kind today. Do something every day to get out of your comfort zone. I began asking myself years ago, and this was really a mechanism I relied on to help me grow in business. What is something I did to get out of my comfort zone today? What action or actions did I take to get out of my comfort zone today? We live in places of comfort. We do things the same way day after day after day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you stay where you are always, you're going to get what you've always got. You've got to do something you've never been comfortable with before. Try something you've not tried before. I challenge you to think you don't need an answer, but when is the last time you tried something for the very first time? I went skydiving a few years ago because I'm deathly afraid of heights. because I'm unwilling to just live life as it is. I want to experience adventure. I want to try things that scare me so deeply. Do something, get out of your comfort zone. And lastly, this is maybe a little bit more challenging to accomplish, but do something that you're proud of. And why I say it's more challenging to accomplish, because we should be proud of ourselves always. Only you know, though, what would make you truly, deeply proud. Maybe it's building a relationship with your mom or dad from years in the past you haven't talked to them in 30 years, or your kid that you haven't talked to in 20 years, or you haven't gone to the gym in 10 years, and you finally make the decision today that I'm going, and I'm now proud of myself. I used to ask, and I don't do this anymore, not because I've grown too much for it, or it just isn't relevant for me at this juncture. I do revert to it time and again if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling blue. Journaling has been truly therapeutic, but don't laugh at me, please. But when I was in college, I used to look myself in the mirror at the end of every night, and I would say, Adam, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for showing up today. I'm proud of you for studying for that exam today. I'm proud of you for going to the gym when you don't want to today. I'm proud of you. And look yourself in the mirror and mean it. Because you should be proud of you. A few gray hairs, a few ages, a few years, a few this. There's still so much life to live. Doesn't matter where you're at, what you've gone through, what you're doing. Be proud of yourself, ladies and gentlemen. You're amazing people because you're people. I don't need to know you. I don't need to know you. This isn't woo-woo fluff stuff. You're a human being with a beating heart. You've got value to add to the world because of that alone. But if you're not proud of self, if you're not proud of you, other people aren't going to be proud either, because they're going to feel that. You owe it to you to be proud of yourself, and darn it, strive to do something every single day to be proud of you. So grateful for you all. Thank you very much.